What is a flower communion? What is it? What does it represent? Why do we even celebrate it? It's been said that Unitarians do not have any holy days. We don't celebrate anything. Well, that's just not true. Our flower ceremony is a uniquely Unitarian Universalist. When Roger asked me if I would conduct the flower ceremony on Easter Sunday, I had to say that I would think about it. How do I, as a new Unitarian Universalist, conduct a flower ceremony that I have never even saw one, I've never participated in one, and I really frankly at that point didn't even know what it meant or how I could be a part of it. But then I thought about how flowers had changed my life. It's been almost 25 years ago when I thought I would buy a flower shop in Tyler, Texas. I had never worked in a flower shop. I had never designed a bouquet, and I hadn't even worked in a retail environment. But my family and friends said, you need to step out. You need to be creative. You have all of these creative juices and artistic ability. You will do well. And with that encouragement, I leaped into the flower industry. So I leaped into the flower communion. I began to do the research to prepare the flower ceremony, and in that search, I discovered that it is not only a binding of the congregation, but it is a way for us to pay tribute to all the people that have touched our lives since we've been here on Mother Earth. These are gifted and gracious people that we will be forever grateful for. They have helped to create the beauty that is within us. I think she's preaching. Create the beauty that is within us. The flower communion is a combining of that beauty with other like-minded people to create a very powerful and great congregation like ours. So with no knowledge or experience of the flower ceremony, but with a great love for the language of flowers, I took the challenge, and you will experience my first flower communion and the first flower communion of our church. There are many of you here that have had many experiences with the flower industry. And if this is not quite up to what you've had in the past, I apologize. What I've tried to do is to look at the way that it was created back in 1923, I believe, and do it as close to the very first one as I could. Of course, I have embellished it a little bit, as you will see. The history of this flower communion is very amazing. I want to share it with you today. The first flower communion was developed by Norbert and Maya Kapek, a Czechoslovakian Unitarian minister. He was born in 1870 and ordained a Baptist minister. Already I had something in common with him. He left the ministry and became a reporter during World War I. His articles angered the government, and he left Europe and came to the United States, where he served in Army intelligence until the end of that war. Maya, his soon-to-be wife, was born in Bohemia in 1888 and attended the Catholic Church. Her intellectual curiosity quickly led her to question the theology that she was taught. In 1908, she and her family moved to New York, where she studied at Columbia University. Later, she worked in the public library there. Norbert, at the time, was a practicing Baptist, was studying at a city college, and did much of his research and studies at the library. They met, and upon her suggestions, they had begun to attend the Unitarian Church there in the city. It was not long until they became Unitarians. Norbert had fallen for Maya, and they were married. In 1921, they returned to Prague with the backing of the American Unitarian Association and founded a small Unitarian church. Most of the churches in Prague at that time was very majestic. The towers, their bells would ring and you could hear it for miles. The organs played mighty music and the sounds would spill into the streets. They had handsome carved doors and beautiful, lots and lots of beautiful stained glass. But there was also a very small plain church in Prague that had none of these. The church had 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor, and a few wooden chairs for them to sit in. But the church had something else. It had good people. They came every Sunday, and they were the most important part of the church, because without the church, without the people, the church would just be a building. Remember when we were kids and this is the church and this is the steeple? Open the door and there's the people. Right, Joan, thank you. This little church met in a rented hall, and services were lectures. The members were mostly rebels from the Catholic faith. They wanted absolutely nothing to do with the Mass, the forms of worship that they were running from. They wanted no gown for the minister to wear. They wanted no elaborate rituals, no singing of hymns, no ornate buildings, and no formal prayers. Afterwards, they would talk a little bit and they would go home. There was no music, no candles, no food, no coffee, no donuts, absolutely nothing churchy. They didn't even want the fellowship to be called a church. This was Norbert and Maya's first church in Prague. Now, Pastor Norbert and Maya felt that the lectures and the sermons that they had was very sterile and very boring at times. Gradually, very slowly, they started to introduce hymns or other traditional elements into the service, but nothing that would remind the congregation of what they had come from. It sort of reminds me of our pastor out in Oregon. Pastor Rick would say if he wanted to move the pulpit from one side of the podium to the other, he would have to do it an inch at a time. So one thing we still have in common with them in the early days. Norbert and Maya felt that they needed some ceremony that would be non-threatening to the congregation and would bind these people together and make them a religious congregation, faithful, spiritual. So one spring, a day a lot like today, Norbert was going out for his daily walk. It had just rained, and everything was as bright and beautiful as it is today. Birds were singing. The flowers were in bloom everywhere. And in the middle of all that beauty, in the countryside of Prague, he got an idea. The next Sunday, the Reverend asked the people in the church to bring a flower, a budding branch, a twig, anything of nature, he said. And the congregation said, "What kind? What color?" He said, "It doesn't matter. You choose." And for some time he had felt the need for a symbolic ritual that would bind his people together more closely. The format that would not alienate them for the religion that they had forsaken. The traditional Christian communion service was not acceptable to the members in his congregation because of their strong reaction to the Catholic faith. So he turned to the native beauty of the countryside for elements of communion which would be genuine to them. A simple service he was creating. It was such a success that it is held annually in most congregations of Unitarian Universalists today. So this is the beginning of our first flower communion. We will share in the ceremony today. The first flower communion was celebrated in June, on June the 4th, 1923. It is so appropriate for our church to celebrate it on Easter Sunday, our first flower communion, April the 20th, 2014, 91 years later. Like yourself, there are new Unitarians in our fellowship that may not be familiar with the flower communion. There will be a time at the end for discussion and sharing that if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them then. Each of us brought flowers of some other object of natural beauty to share today. Together we have placed them individually on the altar and in our basket. You see the beauty you see here before us. This signifies that of your own free will, you have brought a part of yourself to the altar, and that you're willing to accept one another. And it symbolizes the fact that we not only give, but we receive this beauty. We are a community of shared hopes and joys, of burdens and sorrows. These flowers symbolize the individual members of our congregation. These flowers remind us that in spite of all the sorrow of our world, beauty, friendship, and love exist. And now I would like for you all to join me in the blessing of the flowers. In the spirit of the fellowship, I bless these flowers and all they represent to us as a congregation and individually. These flowers say what our hearts feel. Just as each of these flowers have a language all of their own, a beauty different to all that look upon them, so does the members of our congregation. We are a part of all who have touched us and all that we have touched. We are a great congregation with great people, for we are all these beautiful flowers in our congregation. It is in this spirit that bonds us together and attracts us to each other. May we so never lose the sight of this spirit. So be it. Symbolically, these two flowers represent two types of people. They both look alike. They smell alike. But I want to introduce you to Cindy Rose I Can and Connie Rose I Can't. Cindy. Which one's which? Okay. Connie, when you ask Connie to do something, she says, "I'm sorry, I just don't have the time." "Oh, but Connie, would you mind coming early and setting up the coffee and bringing the donuts?" "Oh, I can't. I like to sleep in." She might say, "Connie, would you help out with serving on the board?" "Oh, I can't. I've never done that." And then we have Cindy, who when we ask her to serve on the board, she says, "I think I never have, but I'll try." We ask her if she might serve on a committee, and she says, "Oh, I don't have much time, but I'll try to do that. I think I can. We asked if she might teach an RE or deliver a object lesson to the children, and she says, "Oh gee, I would like to try. I've never done it. Could you help me?" The difference between Connie and Cindy is Connie turns to Cindy and says, "Cindy, I understand you not knowing how to do things or that you're new to the congregation. Let's do it together. Together we'll have more fun and we'll learn together." So these two are part of our congregation, and one that we want to have more Cindy's I can that will help Connie's that I can't. And now what I'm going to do is, now that the flowers are blessed, Anne, would you help me? This vase represents our church, a church that is the building. It's the structure. We want it to be a strong structure that's going to hold us in. It represents our church home. Next, we want to add living water. The water is symbolic of our spirit. Just as the flowers here need water for their nourishment, we need living spiritual water that is going to make us stronger as a congregation. And then we have the greenery that is placed in. And I have to apologize. I'm not competition flower arrangement since I broke my hand, okay? This green represents our environment. It represents the community that we live in. We want to reach out to our neighbors and to the city of Owensboro and ultimately the world. As we grow spiritually, we're ready to work to reach out to the environment that is around us. And now we want to be able to place each of the flowers in our vase that is going to be symbolic of the people that are in our church. Now, if I miss an attribute that you feel that is something that you might bring to the church or something that perhaps a friend of yours, then I want you to be able to tell me, and it's going to be interactive. This represents freedom, spirituality, boldness, organization, justice, compassion, happiness, it was so nice yesterday when I went by the flower shop to pick up some extra flowers. I got to visit with the person that was in the flower shop, and it's so neat to be able to go in a flower shop and smell the lovely aroma that comes from each of the flowers. This one represents unconditional love. All churches have to have a little forgiveness. Courage. Loyalty. How about just a little bit of dignity? Dedication. It's okay. And we have to have innocence. Success. Encouragement. And we couldn't do any of our missions if we didn't have just a little bit of good health. Patriotism. I can hear myself breathe. Strength. Good wishes. Enthusiasm. Understanding. And all the patience in the world. Now, can you think of any attributes that you would like to have added to our bouquet?
Trust.
What?
Trust.
Trust.
Good one, Dixie.
Honesty.
Integrity.
Hey, everybody's
Annie, come here. Here's a pretty one. Let me look at that one.
How about humor?
humor.
Humor. Yes.
Annie.
Flexibility.
Absolutely.
Green is the flowers in the hotel lobby.
Creativity.
Okay.
Cooperation.
One more?
One more.
What's
Did
that?
we get humor? Let's get humor.
We did.
We did? We'll have two for humor.
Cooperation.
Creativity.
Respect.
Creativity.
Respect.
All
42.
when the flowers were all in front of us, we saw their individual beauty. We bring them together in our church, and combined, the beauty is almost overwhelming. It's awesome, the beauty that can be created. These are symbolic of the talents, fruits of the Spirit, the loving nature of each spiritual member we have here in our congregation. The flowers were, as they placed into the vase, may they remind us, amid the diversities of knowledge and of the gifts, that we are of one desire and affection and devotion to the holy will, to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the values of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of the most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, but that we realize that whatever we do, great or small, the effort of all of us is needed to do the work of the congregation in the community and the world. Now, it's time for us to partake of our communion. What I'd like for you to do is each one of us will go table around. I want you to approach the communion vase. Do it quietly and reverently with a sense of how important it is for each of us to address our world and one another with gentleness, justice, and love. I ask that you select a flower that particularly appeals to you. As you take your chosen flower, noting the particular shape and beauty, please remember to handle it carefully. It is a gift that somebody else has brought to you. It represents that person's uniqueness, their humanity, and it deserves to be treated with the kindest and most gentlest of touches. Let us now share quietly in the Unitarian Universalist ritual of oneness and love. Each person will come forward, and when they select their flower, they will go back to their seat and remain standing until everyone has received a flower. That's okay. That's fine. Go, Don. Go ahead. Come on. And now I'd like for you to join me in prayer or whatever form that you use for communication with the higher spirit. In the name of the Spirit of all beauty, which implants the seed for the future of all living trees, plants, and flowers, and also in the heart of mankind, the longing for people to live in love and harmony. Let us renew our commitment in the hope of each other, knowing that we are a true spiritual family, that we are of one spirit, and that is the spirit of love, which unites us as we endeavor for a more perfect and joyful life as we continue in our journey together. Amen. And now, as we near the close of our flower communion service, I would like to open the microphone up to comments, covenants, and sharing. But first, I want to make my covenant to you. This has been a special journey for me in the research for this First Communion. And I want to personally say my commitment to the fellowship and to each of you individually is this. I want to be a better person, more committed to the positive visions of our church, dedicated to the support each of us in whatever value that may be to you individually. This is my commitment to you for the coming year. And the mic is open if you want to say anything or ask a question or discussion.
We all want to thank you, Barbara, for everything you do for us. It's not on, but I'll talk loudly. Everything you do for us, you and Roger.
Really?
You do so much of your time is spent to keep us together and to keep us all growing. And you did such a good job. This was beautiful, and we love you. And you're like a backbone, like a spine that holds us together. Love you, and we love you so much. And me personally, what I want to do this year is to continue being stronger, standing on my own 2 feet without drugs, but also doing more, especially with the children. I want to do more with the education, do whatever I can with the children, and just be here for you guys, whatever you need. So, but we love you, Martha, so much. That's it.
Good job.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Here.
And you turned it off back at the speaker, so it wouldn't squeak on Barbara. Oh, that's okay. We did fine. Talk loud. Good job. I want to say something. Can you hear me? We can hear.
Hello. I just want to say that, I grew up in church. I was going to church before I can ever remember. I went in diapers. And I've been through Sunday school and teenage Sunday school and, all sorts of different church experiences. But I've never felt peace or freedom or the understanding ever poor than what I've experienced since I've been here. And I love this church. And I feel so thankful and blessed to have been able to meet you all and become a part of it. I know that we're a young congregation, but I know that our church can be so great. And I just want to find ways to let other people know we're here, because I know there are other people in other churches that aren't happy there. Mm-hmm. They don't know where to turn.
People who need us.
They don't know what to do, and they don't know that we're here. And they need us and we need them. And I just want to let you know I'm thankful for everybody here, and we're all different, but I know there's love here, and I'm just so happy to be a part of everything here. So, who's next?
Thank you, Dixie.
I just want to echo everything everyone has said so far, and add to it just a couple of things. That not only is this an amazing spiritual congregation, but it's also, I think, not only for myself, but for other people who don't have family here, my family that I've chosen for myself, my tribe, so to speak. The other thing that I'd like to do, in addition to supporting all of you all, of course, is to continue raising my child the best way that I know how, and part of that is raising her as a Unitarian. And it's made her start thinking about things and be more accepting, and I'm really proud that this congregation is part of that. Recently, she said two things that I thought were symbolic of a Unitarian kid. Sarah and Dixie's girls spent the night with us one night. The next morning, Emery looked at me and said, "Now, when are her moms going to be here? When are their moms going to be here?" Just like it was no big thing. Yeah, so there's a level of acceptance there. And then last week, while I was on business, a very good friend of mine kept Emery for me, and they are Jehovah's Witnesses. And Emery and I have discussed that as Unitarians, we're open to different religions, and we accept different ways of thinking and different ways all around. And she said, "I'm actually kind of excited to go to learn about another religion," because she went to the Jehovah's Witness service. So, I just want your all's help in raising my child, and I'll be there for you as well. So I'm proud to be at UU.
Outstanding.
Edna loved flowers, especially wildflowers. She had a hillside behind our house. It was essentially unattended, just God put it there, and she really enjoyed it. I'm convinced that she is with us today.
Amen. Is there anyone else?
Well, look down there. She wants to say something. She definitely wants to talk.
As we approach the closing words, Norman Norbert Fabian Capek died in a World War II concentration camp. He and his brother had a small apartment in Prague. They were listening to a foreign radio broadcast, and the Gazapos broke through the door and dragged them off to a camp. On October the 12th, 1942, he was put in a truck, and his records were marked designation unknown. He was never seen or heard from again. His death certificate states that October the 30th was actually his death day. Maya, who was in the States, did not learn of his death until the war ended in 1945. The first sentence of our final closing words is what Mr. Capek wrote while he was in the concentration camp. Roger, would you lead us in the closing words? And as Roger does, I will extinguish the chalice lighting, symbolizing that we are grateful for what Mr. Capek has given us in the flower ceremony, but it will live on in our hearts as we continue to do the service that we feel our church is called for.
It is worthwhile to live
And fight courageously for sacred ideals. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service its mission. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Be grateful in our soul, walking with each of you in our spiritual quest.
Thank you, Barbara.